She pepper-sprayed my 3-week-old baby in the face. My daughter turned blue, stopped breathing, and nearly died right there on the sidewalk. The HOA president just laughed and walked away. What she didn't know? I'm a session court judge, and I was about to use every ounce of power I had to make sure she'd never hurt another child again. Before we get into this jaw-dropping story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. And if you believe in real justice being served, smash that like button and subscribe. Let me ask you something. Have you ever heard a sound so terrible, so gut-wrenching, that it becomes permanently burned into your brain? A sound that wakes you up in cold sweats months later? A sound that makes you freeze in your tracks when you're just going about your normal day? For me, that sound is my newborn daughter's screams from that Saturday morning. And I need you to understand, these weren't normal baby cries, not the "I'm hungry" whimpers or the "I need my diaper changed" fussing that every parent knows by heart. No, these were screams of pure agony. High-pitched, desperate, terrified shrieks coming from a 3-week-old infant who couldn't possibly understand why her tiny face was burning like fire, why she couldn't catch her breath, why her own mother couldn't make the unbearable pain stop. Let me take you back to that moment. Picture this: a beautiful Saturday morning in our neighborhood of Maple Ridge Estates. The sun was shining, birds were singing, and my wife Emma and I were standing on the sidewalk right outside our townhouse. We were both completely frozen in shock and horror as our precious baby daughter Lily thrashed around in her stroller. Her tiny face had turned a bright, angry red. Her eyes were squeezed shut so tightly. Her mouth was wide open, and those awful screams just kept coming. Just 30 seconds before this nightmare began, everything had been absolutely perfect. It was one of those moments that new parents dream about. Emma and I had decided it was time to take little Lily for her very first real walk around our neighborhood. She was only 3 weeks old at the time, so tiny she was barely bigger than a loaf of bread from the bakery. She was our miracle baby, you see. Emma and I had been trying to have a child for years. Years of disappointment, years of hoping, years of praying. And finally, God blessed us with Lily. On that morning, Emma had stopped walking for just a moment to adjust Lily's blanket. You know how it is with newborns. You're constantly fussing over them, making sure they're comfortable, making sure the blanket isn't too tight or too loose. Meanwhile, I had stepped off to the side, pulling out my phone to take a photograph. Just a simple picture of my wife and daughter on a beautiful morning. The stroller was sitting on the sidewalk, yes, but we were both right there, not more than a couple of feet away. We weren't blocking anyone's path. We weren't causing any problems. We were just two new parents enjoying a precious moment with our newborn baby girl. That's when she showed up, Margaret Sullivan. She was the HOA president of Maple Ridge Estates, and if you've ever dealt with a power-hungry HOA president, you know the type. Margaret was 62 years old, a retired school principal, and she ran our neighborhood like it was some kind of military base. Everything had to be done exactly according to her rules. No exceptions, no flexibility, no basic human understanding. "Move that stroller immediately!" she barked at us, marching down the sidewalk with that permanent scowl on her face. The woman always looked angry about something. "You're blocking the sidewalk. That's a direct violation of HOA Rule 47, Section 3. Emma, bless her heart, tried to be polite. She's always been the diplomatic one in our family. "We're just taking a picture," she said gently, instinctively moving closer to Lily's stroller in a protective gesture. "We'll move in just 1 second." But Margaret wasn't having any of it. "The rules clearly state there are to be no obstructions on sidewalks," she snapped back. "You people think you're special? You think having a baby means the rules don't apply to you?" Now, I'm a calm person by nature. My job requires it. But I could feel my temper starting to rise. I stepped forward, making a conscious effort to keep my voice calm and level. "Mrs. Sullivan," I said, "we're literally standing right here with our baby. We're not blocking anyone. Please just give us 1 moment to take this picture." "I don't give moments," she shot back. "I give citations." And then she actually pulled out her phone and started taking pictures of our stroller, like it was evidence at a crime scene or something. That's a $500 fine for sidewalk obstruction. $500? Emma's voice rose in disbelief. I could hear the shock in her tone. For stopping on a sidewalk for 30 seconds with our newborn baby? You should have thought about that before you decided to break the rules, Margaret shouted back. Her face was getting redder by the second, and I could see that vein in her forehead starting to pulse. That was her tell. Whenever she was on one of her power trips, that vein would throb. Right at that moment, Lily started to fuss a little bit. Just normal baby sounds, nothing unusual. She was probably getting hungry or she needed her diaper changed. Just typical newborn stuff that every parent deals with dozens of times a day. But Margaret turned toward the stroller with this look of absolute disgust on her face. "And that noise," she said, her voice dripping with contempt. "That's disturbing the peace. That's another violation." I felt my hands clench into fists. "She's a baby," I said, struggling to keep my anger under control. "Babies cry. That's what they do. It's not a violation of anything." "In Maple Ridge Estates, it absolutely is a violation," Margaret declared. "I will not tolerate screaming children disrupting the peaceful atmosphere of our community." Emma had heard enough. She bent down toward the stroller, preparing to comfort Lily, to pick her up. "We're leaving," she said firmly. "We're going home right now. This is ridiculous." And that's when Margaret Sullivan did something that still seems impossible to believe, even after all this time. Something so shocking, so cruel, so utterly incomprehensible that my mind struggled to process it even as it was happening right in front of my eyes. She reached into her purse, pulled out a canister of pepper spray, and without any warning, without any hesitation, without any shred of human decency, she sprayed it directly into my 3-week-old daughter's face. Time seemed to stop. Everything moved in slow motion. I saw Lily's little body jerk violently. Her tiny mouth opened in a silent gasp, like she was trying to scream but couldn't get any air. And then came the screaming. Oh, dear God, the screaming. Emma snatched Lily out of the stroller, and that's when we really saw what had happened. Our daughter's face was bright red, and already starting to swell. Her eyes were clamped shut. She was gasping for air, struggling to breathe, her little chest heaving up and down rapidly. It was every parent's worst nightmare come to life. "What did you do?" Emma shrieked, cradling Lily in her arms, trying desperately to help her but not knowing what to do. "You sprayed my baby! You sprayed our baby!" And do you know what Margaret Sullivan did? She smiled. She actually smiled at us. Can you imagine that? She looked at our suffering infant and smiled. "Maybe that'll teach you to follow the rules," she said coldly. "Control your child and move your stroller next time." Then she turned around and walked away. Just walked away casually, like she hadn't just pepper-sprayed an infant, like she hadn't just committed an act of violence against a helpless 3-week-old baby. I stood there for maybe 2 seconds, my brain completely unable to process what had just happened. It was like my mind couldn't accept the reality of what I'd just witnessed. Then survival instinct kicked in, and I snapped into action. "Call 911!" I shouted to Emma, who was sobbing hysterically, trying to wipe Lily's face. "Don't touch her face!" I yelled. "Just hold her! We need an ambulance now!" Lily's screams were getting weaker. That was somehow even more terrifying than the loud screaming. Her breathing was all wrong, raspy, labored, desperate. And then I saw it. Her lips were starting to turn blue. My daughter's lips were turning blue. "She can't breathe." Emma was becoming hysterical. "Michael, she can't breathe." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone, but I managed to dial 911. "My newborn baby was just pepper sprayed in the face," I said, forcing the words out. "She's 3 weeks old. She's not breathing right. We need an ambulance immediately. Maple Ridge Estates, 247 Willow Lane." The operator started asking questions. Standard procedure, I know. But all I could hear was Lily's weakening cries. All I could see were those blue lips. All I could feel was absolute consuming terror that my daughter was dying right there in my wife's arms. Neighbors started running out of their houses. Someone brought water, which was actually the wrong thing to do with pepper spray exposure. But we didn't know that at the time. We were desperate, terrified parents trying anything to help our baby. Emma was screaming for help. Lily was barely making any sounds now, just these awful gasping noises, her little chest heaving, her body starting to go limp. "Stay with us, Lily," Emma was begging, tears streaming down her face. "Baby, please, please don't leave us, please." The ambulance arrived in 6 minutes. 6 minutes that felt like 6 hours. 6 minutes that felt like an eternity. The paramedics took one look at Lily, and their faces went pale. I saw the concern in their eyes, and that terrified me even more. "Pepper spray on an infant?" one of them said, his voice filled with shock and disbelief. They took Lily from Emma's arms and immediately started working on her. They put an oxygen mask on her. It was way too big for her tiny face, but they made it work. They were checking her airways, checking her vital signs, moving with practiced efficiency but obvious concern. "Respiratory distress," one paramedic called out. "Severe chemical burns to the eyes and face. Patient is 3 weeks old, did you say?" "Yes," I managed to get out. "Please help her. Please." They loaded Lily into the ambulance. Emma climbed in with her. There was no way she was leaving our baby's side. I followed behind in our car, my vision blurred with tears, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My daughter. My 3-week-old daughter had been pepper sprayed by our HOA president. A woman who was supposed to serve the community had just attacked an infant, and I was going to make absolutely certain that Margaret Sullivan paid for every single second of my daughter's suffering. My name is Michael Rhodes, and I'm a session court judge. Margaret Sullivan had absolutely no idea who she had just attacked. She had no idea that she'd just committed a violent crime against the child of someone who understood the legal system inside and out, someone who had the knowledge and resources to make sure justice was served. Lily was rushed to the pediatric intensive care unit. The doctors told us she had severe chemical burns to her eyes, face, and respiratory system. The pepper spray had caused her airways to swell up, which is why she had turned blue, why she couldn't breathe. "She's stable now," Dr. Patel told us, but his face was grave and serious. "But I need to be honest with you. The next 24 hours are absolutely critical. Pepper spray can cause very serious damage to an infant's developing respiratory system. It's not designed to be used on babies. An infant's airways are so much smaller than an adult's." "Her eyes?" Emma asked, her voice breaking into pieces. "What about her eyes? We won't know the full extent of the damage until the swelling goes down." "Will she be blind?" Emma's voice was barely a whisper. "Did that woman blind our baby?" "We don't know yet. I'm truly sorry. We're doing absolutely everything we can for her." Emma collapsed against me, sobbing. "She's 3 weeks old, Michael. 3 weeks. What kind of monster does something like this to a baby?" I held my wife close, but inside I was pure ice, pure calculation, pure rage that I was channeling into laser focus. "The kind of monster," I said quietly, "who's about to learn that actions have very serious consequences." A police officer arrived at the hospital, Detective Sarah Chen. I knew her from court. She had testified in several cases I'd presided over. She was thorough, professional, and didn't tolerate injustice. "Judge Rhodes," she said, her face serious. "I heard what happened. I need to take your statement." I told her everything. Every single detail, every word Margaret had said, every second of the horror. "And then she walked away," I finished. She actually smiled and walked away like she hadn't just attacked an infant. Detective Chen's jaw was tight with controlled anger. "We've arrested Margaret Sullivan. She's in custody right now. But Judge Rhodes, I have to tell you, her lawyer is already making noise about HOA authority, about citizens' defense, about your baby disrupting the peace. My 3-week-old baby, I said, my voice dangerously quiet, disrupted the peace by existing? I know it's absolutely insane, Detective Chen said, but her lawyer is good. Richard Morrison. He's going to fight this case hard. I knew Richard Morrison. He was a slick defense attorney who had a reputation for getting guilty people off on technicalities. He'd appeared in my courtroom before, trying to twist the law to suit his client's needs, but he'd never faced me when I was personally invested in a case. Charge her with aggravated assault on a minor, child endangerment, and assault with a chemical weapon, I said firmly. I want every single charge that applies. And Detective Chen, get the security footage from the neighborhood cameras. I want video evidence of exactly what she did. Already on it, Judge. Over the next 48 hours, while Lily fought for her life in the ICU, I worked on building the case that would destroy Margaret Sullivan's life the way she had tried to destroy my daughter's. Detective Chen was incredibly thorough. She found everything we needed and more. The security footage from a neighbor's Ring camera showed the entire incident. Margaret approached us. The argument, Emma bending toward the stroller, Margaret pulling out the pepper spray, aiming it deliberately at the stroller, and spraying directly at Lily's face from only 2 feet away. The video even captured audio. You could hear Margaret's voice saying, "Maybe that'll teach you to follow the rules." Detective Chen also obtained Margaret's phone records. She found text messages Margaret had sent to her daughter that very morning. "Dealing with those Rhodes people today," Margaret had written. "Baby or not, nobody blocks my sidewalks. Time to show them who's in charge." That was premeditation. She'd actually planned to confront us. She'd brought the pepper spray specifically for that purpose. More evidence emerged as the investigation continued. Neighbors started coming forward with their own stories about Margaret's reign of terror in Maple Ridge Estates. "She threatened to spray my dog because it was barking," one neighbor testified. "She said she'd do it and then claim self-defense. She told my teenage son she'd pepper spray him if he ever skateboarded on the sidewalk again," another neighbor reported. "We all thought she was just bluffing, trying to scare him. Now I realize she was dead serious. She's been carrying that pepper spray around for months," a third neighbor revealed. "She told me she needed it to enforce HOA rules when people don't listen. I thought she meant against adults who might get aggressive with her, not against babies." But the most damning evidence came from Margaret herself. When Detective Chen arrested her, Margaret had actually bragged about what she'd done. It was all caught on the officer's body camera. "That baby was a nuisance," Margaret had said, completely matter of fact. "Crying on the sidewalk, stroller blocking foot traffic. I did what was necessary to maintain order and discipline in this community. I have full authority as HOA president to enforce rules by any means necessary." "You pepper sprayed a 3-week-old infant," Detective Chen had said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "I pepper sprayed a noise violation and a sidewalk obstruction," Margaret had corrected her. "The fact that it happened to be a baby is completely irrelevant. Rules are rules, and they apply to everyone." That statement, that absolute lack of remorse, that complete failure to recognize the horror of what she'd done, was going to bury her in court. On day 3, Lily's swelling started to go down. Dr. Patel performed a thorough examination of her eyes. "There is damage," he said gently. "Scarring on the corneas. She's going to need follow-up care, possibly surgery when she's older. But Judge Rhodes, Mrs. Rhodes, I don't believe she's going to be blind." Emma broke down in relief. "She'll see? She'll really be able to see?" "Yes," Dr. Patel confirmed. "Her vision may not be perfect. She'll very likely need glasses as she grows up. But yes, she'll be able to see." I held my wife and daughter close. Lily was finally out of immediate danger, sleeping peacefully in Emma's arms for the first time in days. Her face was still red and swollen, but she was healing. She was going to survive. "She's going to be okay," Emma whispered. Our baby is going to be okay. But the trauma wasn't over, not by a long shot. Lily had developed what the doctors called a fear response. Any sudden movement, any loud noise, and she would start screaming in absolute terror. The pediatrician explained that it was PTSD. Yes, even a 3-week-old baby could develop post-traumatic stress disorder. The pepper spray caused intense pain and fear at a critical stage of her development, the pediatric psychologist explained to us. Her brain has associated that trauma with faces, with voices, with being outside. It's going to take time and specialized therapy to help her feel safe in the world again. Emma blamed herself, the way mothers do. "I should have moved the stroller faster," she said through tears. "I should have picked her up sooner. I should have been able to protect her." "This is not your fault," I said firmly, looking her directly in the eyes. "This is Margaret Sullivan's fault, and only her fault. And she's going to pay for every single tear, every single nightmare, every single moment of fear she's caused our daughter." I sat in the courtroom, but not in my usual place on the bench. This time I was in the gallery, just another person in the audience. Another judge, Judge Patricia Williams, was presiding over the case because of my personal involvement. That's how the system works. You can't be both judge and victim in the same case. Margaret walked in with Richard Morrison at her side, looking smug and self-righteous, like she was the victim in all of this, like she was the one who had been wronged. The charges were read aloud. Aggravated assault on a minor, child endangerment, assault with a chemical weapon, and violating civil rights. How does your client plead? "Not guilty, Your Honor," Richard Morrison stood and announced, "and we move for immediate dismissal of all charges. My client was acting within her legal authority as HOA president to enforce community rules. The minor in question?" "The minor," I stood up, unable to keep silent, "is a 3-week-old infant who was pepper-sprayed in the face for the crime of existing on a sidewalk." "Judge Rhodes, please sit down," Judge Williams said, though her tone wasn't unkind. "I understand this is deeply personal, but you cannot speak during these proceedings. Your Honor, may I address the court?" The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Martinez, stood up. "The evidence in this case is absolutely overwhelming. We have clear video footage of the defendant deliberately pepper-spraying an infant. We have text messages showing premeditation. We have the defendant's own statement admitting to the act and showing zero remorse whatsoever. This was not HOA enforcement. This was an assault on a helpless baby." Richard Morrison actually scoffed. "The defendant was simply maintaining order in her community. She had no reasonable way of knowing the stroller contained an infant." "The baby was clearly visible and crying," Jennifer shot back immediately. "The video proves it beyond any doubt." "Enough," Judge Williams said firmly. "I've reviewed all the evidence that's been submitted so far. Mr. Morrison, your motion to dismiss is denied. This case will proceed to trial. As for bail—" "Your Honor, my client has no prior criminal record whatsoever," Morrison interrupted. "She has strong ties to the community. Your client pepper-sprayed a newborn baby and has shown absolutely no remorse." Judge Williams cut him off coldly. "Bail is set at $500,000. The defendant is to have absolutely no contact with the Rhodes family or with any residents of Maple Ridge Estates. If she posts bail, she'll be under house arrest with an ankle monitor." Margaret's face turned red. "This is absolutely outrageous," she burst out. "I was simply doing my job as HOA president. That family was breaking clearly stated rules." "Mrs. Sullivan, one more outburst and I will hold you in contempt of court," Judge Williams warned sternly. "You're dismissed." As the bailiffs led Margaret away, she looked directly at me and smiled. That same cold, cruel smile from the sidewalk. "You can't touch me," she mouthed silently. "I have rights." I smiled back, and I know my smile was even colder than hers. She had absolutely no idea what was coming for her. Over the next month, while Lily slowly healed at home, the prosecution built what can only be described as an ironclad case. Jennifer Martinez was absolutely brilliant. She compiled everything we needed and more. The video evidence was devastating. The medical records show Lily's injuries in graphic detail. Expert testimony about the extreme dangers of using pepper spray on infants. Witness after witness detailing Margaret's pattern of abusive behavior over the years. And then we discovered Margaret's history. A history she'd tried to hide. She'd actually been forced to resign from her position as a school principal 15 years ago after numerous excessive discipline complaints. In plain English, she had physically grabbed students, locked them in closets, and psychologically abused them for years. The school district had quietly paid settlements to 3 different families and forced Margaret to resign without any public announcement. No charges had been filed at the time, no criminal record created. But those families were willing to testify now. "She grabbed my son by the throat for running in the hallway," one mother testified in a pre-trial deposition, her voice shaking with remembered anger. "He was 7 years old. When I complained, she told me that children needed to learn obedience through fear. She locked my daughter in a supply closet for talking during an assembly," another parent said, "for 2 hours. My daughter was claustrophobic and terrified of small spaces for years afterward." Margaret Sullivan had been abusing children for decades. The HOA presidency had simply given her a new arena for her cruelty, a new group of victims she could terrorize with impunity. The trial itself lasted 2 full weeks. 2 weeks of absolutely devastating evidence against Margaret Sullivan. The video was played for the jury multiple times, from every available angle. There was simply no way to spin it, no way to claim ignorance or self-defense or accident. Margaret had deliberately, intentionally pepper-sprayed a baby. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours before returning with their verdict. Guilty. Guilty on every single count. Margaret's face went white as a sheet. For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw real fear in her eyes. She'd finally realized that her power had limits, that she'd crossed a line she could never uncross. The sentencing hearing took place 3 weeks later. Lily was 4 months old by then, growing stronger every single day, but still showing clear signs of trauma. Emma had written a victim impact statement. She stood at the podium with Lily in her arms. We'd gotten special permission to bring her to court. "This is Lily," Emma said, her voice strong despite the tears streaming down her face. "She's 4 months old now. She's beautiful and strong and so loved, but she's also traumatized. She screams when strangers approach her. She panics at sudden loud noises. She has nightmares that wake her up crying in the middle of the night." Emma looked directly at Margaret. "You did this to her. You looked at my newborn baby and decided she deserved to suffer. You pepper-sprayed her in the face and walked away laughing while she struggled to breathe. Lily will need to wear glasses because of you, possibly need surgery when she's older. She'll need years of therapy to help her process the trauma she's too young to even understand. And she'll grow up one day knowing that someone hurt her badly for absolutely no reason other than cruelty and a desire for power." Or, Emma's voice broke. "I hope you never know a moment of peace. I hope every single day you spend in prison, you remember the sound of my baby's screams. I hope it haunts you the way it haunts me every single night." Judge Williams looked at Margaret with obvious contempt. "Mrs. Sullivan, I've been a judge for 20 years. I have seen terrible things in this courtroom, but I have never, ever seen someone pepper spray a 3-week-old infant and show absolutely no remorse whatsoever. Your Honor, my client has documented mental health issues." Richard Morrison tried one last desperate time. Your client has a history of abusing children," Judge Williams cut him off sharply. "She was forced to resign as a school principal because of it. She continued that pattern of abuse as HOA president. And when a family dared to momentarily occupy a sidewalk with their newborn baby, she attacked that baby with a chemical weapon." Judge Williams turned to face Margaret directly. "You claim you were enforcing rules, but there is no rule, no law, no authority anywhere that gives anyone the right to pepper spray an infant. You didn't maintain order. You committed assault on a completely helpless baby." Her voice was steel. "Margaret Sullivan, I hereby sentence you to 20 years in state prison for aggravated assault on a minor. Additionally, you will serve consecutive sentences of 15 years for child endangerment and 10 years for assault with a chemical weapon. Your total sentence is 45 years. You will be eligible for parole in 30 years. The courtroom erupted in applause. Margaret just stood there, shocked, finally understanding that her actions had real consequences. "I was just enforcing the rules," she whispered, but no one was listening anymore. She was led away in handcuffs, and I felt the first real sense of justice since that horrible morning on the sidewalk. Lily's second birthday party was everything a children's party should be. Colorful balloons everywhere, a beautiful cake, the sound of laughter and joy filling the air. Our daughter ran around the backyard chasing bubbles, giggling with pure, innocent happiness. She still wore glasses, probably always would. She still had occasional moments of anxiety, but she was thriving, growing, living a normal, happy childhood. Emma watched from the porch, her hand resting on her very pregnant belly. We were expecting again, a boy this time. Lily was going to be a big sister. "You okay?" I asked, wrapping my arm around Emma's shoulders. "Yeah," she said softly. "Just thinking about how far we've all come. 2 years ago, I genuinely thought I'd lost her. Thought she'd be traumatized forever, that she'd never be able to trust the world." "She's incredibly strong," I said. "Just like her mother." "Like both her parents," Emma corrected, kissing my cheek. We watched Lily laugh as she successfully caught a bubble, her joy pure and completely unfiltered. Margaret Sullivan was in prison, where she belonged. The HOA had been completely restructured with new, reasonable leadership. Maple Ridge Estates had changed. People valued kindness over rigid rules now, and our family had healed. Not completely. Some scars remain forever. But we'd survived the worst thing we could imagine. We'd fought back, and we'd won. "Happy birthday, baby girl," I called out to Lily. She turned around, her glasses catching the sunlight, and gave us the biggest smile imaginable. "Dada! Mama, look!" She was holding a beautiful butterfly that had landed gently on her hand. Emma started crying, happy tears this time. "She's not afraid anymore," she whispered, and she was absolutely right. Lily held that butterfly with pure wonder, not fear. She had overcome the trauma. She had learned to trust again, to find joy in the world. Margaret Sullivan had tried to break our daughter, had attacked her for the simple crime of existing, had nearly been killed over a blocked sidewalk. But Lily was so much stronger than that. Our entire family was stronger than that. And justice, real, complete, satisfying justice, had been served. As Lily released the butterfly and watched it fly away into the blue sky, I knew that this moment, her healing, her joy, her fearless wonder at the beauty of the world, this was the real victory. Margaret Sullivan was in prison where she belonged, and our daughter was free.